stages. And again, I want you to think back to some of the changes you identified either here or when we did that first activity. Denial, shock. Can you see yourself going through that denial? I promise you, this is exactly what I was going through on May, what day did we fly out? May 8th. And we're almost, I know they just gave us breakfast because it was one of those, you know, leave at night and get there and it's the next morning. Got breakfast, we should be touching down, you know, really soon. And my husband is asleep, and I'm looking at that monitor. You know that monitor they have that shows the plane, and it shows the map, and it shows where you are and your trajectory. And I'm like, why is the plane sitting on top of Rome when we're going to Milan? I was like, this can't be happening. I was in significant denial and shock. And just a few minutes later, they came across the intercom and said, oh, I guess you guys have noticed that we've been diverted to Rome. So we're sitting in Rome right now. So that was a lot of denial and shock. Now, down here at the bottom, we've got some leadership strategies you can use to manage change effectively. 1, communicate extensively. Communicate, communicate, communicate. There is no substitute for that. Do you ever notice a lot of times in organizations when changes are happening, there is little communication or little formal communication? What sort of communication do you typically have?
Rumors. Around the water.
Exactly. You find out what's going on. I mean, I started hearing whispers, you know, a few rows behind before the pilot actually came on. And actually, that's what made me the most upset. Was I looked at the monitor, I could see that we were in Rome, and then I heard people talking about it back there, and I saw the flight attendants whispering, and then like 5 minutes later, he comes across the intercom and says, oh, I guess you've noticed by now that we've been diverted to Rome. Well, you know, it would have been nice if you told us that before we noticed it on the monitor. So communicate extensively, explain the rationale for the change. I mean, if he comes across and says, you know what, they've closed the Milan airport because of the volcanic ash, so we can't land there, so we're going to have to land in Rome, it's hard for me to really argue with that. So explaining that rationale certainly helps. And then observe responses. You want to see what's going on. You want to get that feedback. You really want to listen and have some sense of some empathy. Once they moved through kind of that denial and shock, and I definitely did that, I was like, we are not going to Rome. We are not in Rome right now. Then you get to anger and other emotions. And that's when, you know, I'm like, I can't believe this. This is not happening. Just getting really, really angry. From a leadership perspective, you really need to empathize, listen, and support. You want to encourage some venting. Why would I say that? That probably seems a little antithetical to what you might expect. Why do we want to encourage some venting? Aren't we trying to,
The pot's going to eventually boil over if you don't.
Exactly.
It's going to be out of control.
Exactly. It's much, much better to try to encourage some of that, have it in a more controlled fashion, than try to pretend like this isn't going on, and then like she said, they just kind of go crazy. You know, it really kind of explodes. So you want to get that out. You want to bring people together and say, I know we're not real thrilled about it. You know, let's talk about it. You know, what do you not like? What are you feeling? So you really want to get some of that out. I remember I had a director when I was with a major Fortune 100 company at one point, and in all of his staff meetings, he actually had a section at the very end of the meeting called Kudos, Tips, and Gripes. And we spent about 20 minutes in kudos, tips, and gripes every, I think it was every 2 weeks. And so his thought was kind of what we're talking about here. That gripes part was his concept of, you know what, I know there's stuff going on that you don't like. I know there are knucklehead decisions being made sometimes. I want to hear about it. You know, I want you to tell me what's going on. I want you to tell me what you're thinking. Because one of the mistakes most leaders make is they get in those public settings and nobody says anything, and they actually think things are okay. Or they throw out their idea, oh, I think we need to figure out how to make peanut oil into jet fuel. What does everybody else think? Oh yeah, Jen, that's great. And then as soon as the meeting's over, they're over by the Coke machine, having what I call the meeting after the meeting, and they're like, oh, you know he's on crack. There is no way that is going to happen. That's just another knucklehead, you know, pea-brain idea from Jim. But that's exactly what happens. I mean, haven't you seen that? Or I call the conference call after the conference call where nobody on people's minds. You really, really do need to hear that. And that's also what I'm talking about here with your comment. That maybe this is a knucklehead change. Maybe we really don't need to do it. You need to listen. You need to hear what people have to say. And then continue that communication. Next stage, bargaining. Okay, I'm going to bargain. Okay, I'm not ready to do this, but could I do this? You know, I don't want to completely use the new system. Could I just use the old system until the 30th? So you really start bargaining. You start negotiating. And I feel like I went through that. I'm like, okay, they need to get us a train. Okay, I know they can fly us there, but they need to get us a train. Somehow I need to be in Milan tonight. So you start that bargaining process. But here, we need to consider options and facilitate creative idea generation. And so that's exactly, again, in my response to Andy, I'm completely saying, if it's a knucklehead idea, or there are other options or other ways to address that issue, we want to get that out. So that's where that would happen. Maybe there's some other alternatives. There's a better way of doing this. So you want to push back and you want to share what those options are. And if you're the one leading the change, you don't want to shut people down. You want to hear from them. Okay, you want them to have an environment where they feel free to push back. Then there's grieving. Okay? There's grieving from moving from the old way, from the old process, the old personnel, to the new. So that's a normal part of the process. So you just want to channel that energy positively, encourage networking, encourage relationship building, provide resources and support, and also provide some element of consistency. I was working with teaching a session at Emory not long ago, and they were physically relocating to a different building. Have any of you had that? A physical relocation. Again, Laura, she looks like she's in pain right now. Okay. That, it seems like it shouldn't be that big of a change. It's a huge change. And so one of the things, actually did a few things I thought were really, really interesting. One, they tried to keep as much stable and the same while this move was going on, so not change anything else. And they also encourage people to bring even small things like plants they had at the old place, pictures they had at the old place, try to keep that consistency. Then the other thing that they did, which I thought was really, really neat, is they played the scavenger hunt game the day that they had the move to force them to not only get to see their new environment, but to meet and interact with all the new people. Okay? Because you move to a new place, you're like, I don't know these people. I don't know what they do, here. So it forced them to meet the new people, meet the neighbors, and so it really, really helped them kind of move through some of this grieving. And then the last stage, rewarding accomplishments and measuring the strides. How are we doing with accommodating this particular change?